Hello everyone and welcome to Pick Tuition's very first O-Level A-Math series. In this series, we hope to condense key points for each chapter so that you can review these just before your examinations. So let's begin. Today we'll be talking about a very simple A-Math topic called linear graphs. Now the whole point of studying linear graphs is to understand how a variable y changes with respect to a variable x. So for example, let's assume that the variable x represents the number of questions you do during an examination. If you get every single question right, then we assume that for each question you do, you will get 1 mark, which means that if I do one question over here, I will get 1 mark. If I do 2 questions, I will do 2 marks. Now, y represents the number of marks. If we were to draw a straight line through these points, we will get something that looks like this. So if let's say further down the line, we manage to do 50 questions, how many marks should I have? Now, this question can be easily answered if we understand the simple form of a linear graph. Now, the equation for a linear graph is y equals to mx plus c. What does this mean? So y represents the number of marks. Marks equals to m, the number of questions, plus c. So what is m and c? M represents how much y changes when x increases by 1. So as you can see here, whenever x goes up by 1, y also increases by 1, right? Because as we said earlier, for each question that you do, you will gain 1 mark. So the mathematical formula to find out the rate of change equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What is y2? y2 is basically the coordinate of the y2 and x2 are the coordinates of the second point, and y2 and y1 are the coordinates of the first point. So then you can just sub in the values as follows. 2 minus 1 over 2 minus 1 equals to 1 over 1, which gives you 1. Now let's talk about c. C represents the y-intercept. It is the value of y when x equals to 0. In the example that we gave, if you do not do any questions, it stands to reason that you will have 0 marks. So our c in this case is 0. Thus, our eventual equation will look like this. The number of marks you get equals to 1 times the number of questions that you do plus 0. Now let's talk more about the effects of m and c. Now, if m was a positive number, you would have a line that looks like what we drew earlier. If m was a negative number, that means the line will be sloping towards your right hand instead. So it may look something like this. We have 2, 2, 1, 1. And we have these 2 points where 1, 2, like this. And if you draw a line through, it will slope towards your right hand. Under what circumstances will you have m smaller than 0, meaning your gradient is negative? This may come in the form of the number, let's say y equals to the number of marks that you lose for each question that you get wrong. That means x is our number of questions that we got wrong times m plus c. Right? As you can see here, when there are no questions being done, for some reason, this student has negative marks already. Maybe this is due to a presentation error or something that happened. So these are the effects of m greater than 0 and m smaller than 0. Let's talk about the second most important feature of the graph, which is c. Now, what happens if c increases or decreases? So in this case, let's go back to m greater than 0. We have this equation over here where the number of marks equals 1 times n number times the number of questions plus 0. Now, if let's say the student manages to gain 1 mark just for writing his name, so that means that the y-intercept equals to 1. Then we can draw a second line starting from here, and we know that for finishing 1 question, this student will have 2 marks, and for 2 questions, this student will have 3 marks. This will give us a line that looks like this. Please note that these two lines, the one in the green and the one in the blue, are parallel to each other because they have the same gradient of 1. The only thing that changed was the y-intercept. This line has the equation y equals to x. This line has the equation y equals to x plus 1. What happens if we decrease the y-intercept? So if we decrease the y-intercept, for example, maybe the student just gets penalized 1 mark because he's too good in the examination. Let's say, hypothetically, it's not going to make sense, but yeah. So let's say it comes like this. He lost 1 mark just for starting the paper. At his first question, he will have 0 marks. At his second question, he will have 1 mark. This gives us a line like this. And you can see that all 3 lines are actually parallel to each other. This line has the equation y equals to x minus 1. So those are the most important features of line graphs. Firstly, we covered gradient. What is gradient? Gradient is just how much y changes when x increases by 1. And it is found by this formula over here. The second thing that we covered are the effects of the y-intercept. If we increase the y-intercept, the line shifts up parallel. And if we decrease the y-intercept, the line shifts down parallel. The same effect can be seen if you try it on this graph where the gradient is less than 0. That's all for today's session. Let me know if you have any questions or any other topics that you want us to cover. Thank you for watching this video.